All right, let's see if I can do this successfully. I might have to do this weird thing where you see yourselves on the screen for a second. So forgive me for subjecting you to that. Okay. Can you guys still see yourself on the sides? Is that weird? Yes. I'll try to make you disappear as much as we can.
We're on the side.
Okay. Ignore yourselves. Unless I can make this go away. There we go. Okay. So here goes the cheesy video. All right, I hope you enjoyed my cheesy video. Any questions about said cheesy video?
I like that the ample parking was mentioned.
I know that at a lot of campuses, it can be really hard, but we have like the entire campus is surrounded by parking lots. So we know that we have mostly commuter students and it's very much accommodated. Any questions or comments on anything that you saw in the video, anything that was confusing, anything that zoomed by too quickly? Okay. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that it was rated the top most affordable one, but that's pretty interesting to me, especially because I was already wanting to go there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as you, I'm sure all know, tuition rates can be really high, especially when you compare the CSU system to the UC system. I think you guys probably know the prices of the tuition more than I do at this point, but isn't it like the CSUs at this point is it 6,000, 4,000 a year? Do we know this information? I know the UCs are like 14,000. So it's more than double the price at a UC in comparison to a CSU for a year's tuition, which is quite significant. Yeah, some of the other highlights in the video, we do have 3 labs, I told you that. We have great faculty members. One of our faculty members in the video has since left. She retired, but we do have another faculty member, and I'll tell you a bit about all of our faculty members in a moment. We do have a lot of scholarships, which is really great at the university, but also the department has these really amazing scholarships that help support students who want to do field research or lab schools over the summer. So we have a hefty amount of money, some of it specifically reserved for archaeology, but some of it general. And the archaeology money is connected to our master's program, which we have in applied archaeology. And it's specifically focused, or it has traditionally been focused on California archaeology and preparing students for the CRM or cultural resource management field. So as a part of that same program, we have this pot of money set aside for students who want to do archaeological training that can help them to do California archaeology, which has been interpreted very broadly in the past, because basically if you go to any archaeology field school, it's preparing you to do archaeological work in California. So yeah, we have those really great fellowships or scholarships for over the summer, as well as some department level scholarships. We're typically able to provide scholarships to between 4 and 6 students each year, at least several $1,000s to help with tuition costs or any other costs that you might have. And that is an application process that is together with your FAFSA. So even if you aren't applying for financial aid, you would want to file the FAFSA in order to be considered for those scholarship opportunities from the Department of Anthropology. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about our faculty members. I told you about myself. I wish that there were other, I could take you down the hall and show you their offices, but it's not very exciting. But we do have 2 other cultural anthropologists on staff. Harim Khan is a sociocultural anthropologist who has a dual appointment in our department and in ethnic studies. And so ethnic studies is a new department that's actually going to start next year. So right now it's just a concentration, but next year it'll start to be its own department. But Harim, or Dr. Khan, she studies the threading industry and looks at how the threading, and she could speak to it obviously much better than I can, but if you've heard of threading before, where it's like the removal of hair on your face, she studies the way in which women's bodies, and specifically Asian women's bodies, are exoticized within this industry, and she looks at how it connects to different forces of globalization and racism. She's on one side of my office. On the other side of my office is Teresa Velasquez, and she works in a country that I'm blanking on the name of right now, Ecuador. And she specifically studies politics of water rights. So she looks at human rights, environmentalism, community relationships, and changing from rural to urban contexts there. So the 3 of us are the cultural anthropologists, faculty members here, permanent faculty members in the Department of Anthropology. Then we have 3 archaeologists currently on staff. One of them, the most senior person, is Russell Barber, and he is retiring in 2 more years. Russell Barber, he studies North America and North American archaeology, specifically archaeology of the Southwest. He also has done a lot of work locally and looking into how rights to water and diversion of water restricted the development of some areas in the Inland Empire and allowed for development in other areas. Our second archaeologist is, oh my gosh, we have 4 archaeologists now. I totally lied to you, I'm sorry. The second archaeologist is Guy Hepp, and he studies in Mexico, and specifically he works in the Costa Chica area, and he studies sensory archaeology as well as general Mesoamerican archaeology. Third archaeologist, who's also the director of our master's program in applied archaeology, is Matt Delorier. He also works in Mexico on an island that I'm forgetting the name of right now, but he looks at the peopling of the Americas, and specifically the hypothesis that people arrived in the Americas by boat along the coast rather than by land. Then our 4th archaeologist, who just joined our faculty this year, just recently minted PhD in August from UC Berkeley, is Danny Sosa Aguilar. And Dr. Sosa Aguilar, his work specifically looks at the American Southwest, and he does what's called indigenous archaeology, which is a form of archaeology that defines its agenda based on what indigenous societies want to know about their past, their history, and who they are today. And so Dr. Sosa Aguilar, I can't remember the name of the group that he works with specifically, but it's in New Mexico. And the group there wanted to know more about trading routes in the past. And so he created an archaeological agenda and developed methods in order to help them answer the questions that they had. So those are our 4 archaeologists. And then we have 1 biological anthropologist, which is the chair of the department, Dr. Wesley Neuwiner. And he studies Neanderthal thumbs, very specific. So he would be in charge of all of the biological anthropology classes. He teaches forensic anthropology as well as the history of human evolution and things of that nature. So that's our department. We're a small department. All of our classes are generally small, except for those intro classes that all of you will have already taken care of at the community college level. Our upper division classes probably range between 4 students and maybe 25 at the top end of things. We do have the requirement that all students take in their junior year. So I'm guessing when you all transfer in, you'll be juniors and you would be taking the history of anthropological thought class in your junior year. And then as seniors, you would take a senior seminar, which looks at all of the fields of anthropology and how they collectively answer questions about humanity. So with those 2 classes, you go through the program somewhat as a cohort, but otherwise you're allowed to choose your classes. You do have to take 3 upper division sociocultural classes, 3 upper division archaeology classes, and 1 upper division bio class. But you have a lot of classes to choose from among those. We also do have the requirement that all students take 1 of their sociocultural classes focused on a region. So you might take anthropology of Africa or anthropology of Asia or anthropology of the Middle East. And 1 of the archaeology classes likewise has to be region focused. Easy. All students also have to take a lab class, but you have a lot to choose from. There are 2 different archaeology lab classes you can take. One is lab methods and one is field methods. You can also take a bio lab class, which would be human osteology, learning to identify all the bones of the human body. Or you can take one of the 2 sociocultural lab classes. One is community engaged research methods, which teaches you how to do field work, how to take field notes, how to do interviews, things like that. And the other one is the lab class that I teach, which is museum studies, where we learn how to do research with museum objects and how to put together museum exhibits. That's a lot of information. Let me pause and see if you have any questions. None. I was so clear.
I guess just like ask again. You said that there's like 4 to 25 students, like on average in the upper level classes. Okay, interesting.
Yeah, a lot of them are really small.
That's really good. Yeah, I didn't like assume that, I guess, because I thought like in community college classes it's like smaller, but then I thought like as you transfer it gets bigger, which I was kind of like worried about, you know, because it's like less interaction directly with the professor. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and I think your assumption is right, Aisha, because at a lot of colleges that does happen, and we're really lucky here in that we have a lot of support from our college dean, who allows us to run classes even when they are small, because we are a small major. It's a very tight-knit community of the anthropology students. And I think we have 80 majors at this point. And that's one of the reasons we're able to keep the classes small. Any other questions before I take you on a tour? No? Feel free to jump in at any time. All right, I'm going to try some technical wizardry and try to sign in on an iPad so that I can be mobile. So give me a second.
I was going to ask, I know this might be different based on COVID now, but how often do you do museum exhibits?
Great question.
You can hear me, yes?
Yes.
Can I have a sign of life?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. Okay, great question about the museum exhibits. Yes, what we do is one museum exhibit every year. That's all I can really manage because my position is half teaching, half museuming. So I aim for one exhibit a year. Students are always involved in various capacities. I like to involve students as assistant curators. So that's what I try to do, but I recognize that not all students have the time for that. So some students get involved as interns. Some of them do research projects and honors theses, and some just help out through their coursework. So for example, next semester, I'm teaching my museum lab class. And last year when I did that, I had the students each curate their own small exhibit to put on display in the museum. Not everybody's exhibits were viable, but we had 5 students, I think out of 8, that ended up seeing their exhibits all the way to fruition. And I'm going to take you over there in just a moment to show you those. So right now, as I mentioned, the museum is full of student curated exhibits. So it's just a series of different exhibits that different students curated. When I teach the class next semester, I'm shifting things and we're going to be helping to curate a gallery, a full gallery exhibition. So right now I have 2 exhibits in the pipeline. One of them for next year, for 2022, is called Into Light, and it's being done together with a nonprofit agency out of North Carolina. And their goal is to have a unique exhibit in every state focused on addiction and overdose. And so what they do is they invite people who have lost someone to addiction or overdose to share their story and a picture of the person they lost. If you hear children in the background, it's because there's a daycare center underneath this building, and the kids go and visit the museum, which is right across the hall. So sorry if you hear some strange noises. So we're going to be doing this exhibit Into Light. We're starting actually in January to recruit people who have lost a loved one to overdose to share their stories in the museum, and that's going to open in September. The students in my class next semester in spring, we're going to be working on the exhibit for 2023, and that one is called Afrontalo, which in Spanish means face it. And the exhibit is focused on Afro-descendant communities in Mexico. So for that exhibit, we're going to be working with a small collection of items that I collected this last summer when I participated in a Fulbright Hays seminar focused on Afro-descendant populations in Mexico. And we're going to be developing 3 themes for an exhibit, looking at the history of the arrival of Afro-descendants in Mexico. We're going to look at ways in which African cultures have influenced Mexican culture. And we're going to do a co-curation with communities in Mexico. So I have 3 contacts there, and I'm looking for a 4th where we're going to have the communities work together with us to curate their own portions of the exhibit. And then a 4th part of the exhibit is going to look at Afro-descendants in the Inland Empire. So my students are going to be working on that. They're going to be proposing additional objects for the exhibition. We received a small grant so that we can actually purchase the items that they select. And from that class, I'm hoping to find and recruit 3 students to work with me over the summer. CSUSB has this really amazing program called the Undergraduate Summer Research Program, or USRP. It's through our Office of Student Research, which provides all sorts of opportunities for students who are interested in getting involved with faculty-based research or doing their own research. They maintain a database of research projects that faculty members are doing. This year, they started a really innovative project in which they match work study students. So if you're eligible for work study as part of your financial aid, they can match you with a faculty member doing research. So you can use your work study, not just to work on campus at a restaurant or work in a secretarial fashion, but to build your research skills. So that's a brand new program, really exciting here. And they also offer this undergraduate summer research program, which gives you a paid internship with a faculty member over the summer and one-on-one mentorship in research processes and methods so that you can build up your resume and possibly co-author publications and get ready for grad school. So that's another way that students get involved with the museum as well, is through that program. I keep throwing like a ton of information at you. Are there any other questions before I leave my office and take you through the museum and the labs and such. I have to get a mask. No, feel free to interrupt me at any time. Okay, so I'm gonna have to mask up. I'm hoping that you can still hear me. I need to remember my keys so I don't lock myself out. All right, so I'm going to, can I change this? I think I can. All right, so this is the Anthropology Museum. And I'm going to be respectful and not video the kids because this is being recorded. But it's a small and unassuming place. You can see right here is our first exhibit. This was put together actually kind of as a tribute to the anthropology professor who retired last year. This was her Hindu shrine. And my students in my class last year put together these labels that explain the Hindu pantheon. And we work on both the writing of labels as well as the design of labels. So when we come into the space, it's about a 1,500 square foot gallery. And you can see the first panel, it just tells you it's a student exhibit showcase. We have cases, we have mounts, we have objects. So this is an exhibit put together by one of my students, Allie. She looked at pottery, Southwestern pottery, and how it's formed and different techniques that are used. This is another exhibit over here by Daniel. And Daniel was looking at metalworking in Nepal. We have a nice collection of Nepalese objects. Sorry if it's kind of washed out, but you can see some of the campus and the mountains back there a little bit and how nice it is. It's one of the life science buildings out there. Over here, we have an exhibit by Lisa. She wanted to do an exhibit specifically looking at Native American produced face masks during the pandemic. And she matched the different face masks with different Native American values. So she used them face masks in order to interpret those values and to illustrate them. So she has 6 different, 2 of them are facing the other way, 6 different values, all paired with Native American made face masks. Another exhibit over here by Matt. This one is looking at concepts of authenticity. And so he wanted to challenge notions of authenticity, and he used the Nepalese collection as well, looking at how the way something is manufactured or what it's made from or its use, how that can have an impact on the way that its authenticity is interpreted. This is an exhibit by Arnold. Arnold wanted to look at Indigenous resistance and how you can see that in material culture. So he looked at adaptation, he looked at pride, and he looked at hybridity in 3 different areas of the world in order to think about how Indigenous societies around the world have reacted to and are reacting to globalization and colonization. This was an exhibit done by Sarah, who's in the political science department, and she actually worked with an archival collection in order to learn more about the historical legacy of Nancy Smith, who was the first female Board of Supervisors president in San Bernardino County. Another exhibit, this one's by Haley. She wanted to look at the concept of art. She's actually an art student. So she took several objects and interpreted them in different ways: art or craft, art or appropriation, and art or artifact. Around the other side is Stacy's exhibit, and she wanted to look kind of at the pandemic through material culture. So she looked at how societies around the world react to different kinds of distress. So she looked at cultural distress, she looked at health distress, and she looked at community distress. Let's see. Over here, a small exhibit by Caitlin, looking at religion as a form of cooperation. And over here is an exhibit by Natalie, who wanted to see how natural materials are repurposed and given meaning in different societies. And then finally, over here is a really nice exhibit by Kia.
And she wanted to look at death and persistence. So she considered death from a number of different perspectives, looking at how people leave a legacy behind, either from hieroglyphs to endowing things to becoming ancestors that can continue to have an impact on people, to remains of things being repurposed. So those are the exhibits that we have currently, again, all put together by students. I'm going to take you down the hall now. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them. Or you can just stare at my avocado face as we jaunt down the hall. So I'm on the 3rd floor of the Social and Behavioral Sciences building. Some people call this building the Love Boat because it looks like a boat. People who don't like it call it the Titanic. So you can know a little bit about their perspectives. And I'm just rounding the corner to get to the other side of the building where we have our labs. I wonder if I can get in there. Let's see, I'll go in this way first. So I'm going to take you in one of our labs. Actually, no, I'm not going to take you in there. I'm going to take you over here. This room that I'm taking you into is our student space. Let's actually get in. So let's see if I can get it to light up. It's one of those rooms where you have to move around. There we go. So this is our student computer lab. This is just for anthropology students. So this is also where our student club, which is called Alpaca, where they meet, and Alpaca stands for something, which it will tell us on this shirt, which is archaeology, linguistics, physical anthropology, cultural anthropology, which together makes Alpaca. So as you can imagine, we have a lot of stuffed alpacas and whatnot hanging out around this space. Seem to have been cleared right now. This room is also where we have the Anthropology Museum storage. So whatever's not on display is in here. And the students that work with the museum program usually get to work with these objects. We have a small collection. It's about 550 objects, archaeological as well as some material culture from around the world. So that's this space. Questions, thoughts, concerns, ideas?
After I worked at a museum for the summer for an internship, and at that museum they have foam mounts where all the fragile stuff go into. I didn't see a lot of the fragile stuff in that storage room in any foam.
Yeah, so our museum is very underfunded. I have a budget of 0. So there's really not the resources available. In museums, there's often ideals and there's realities. And some museums are better endowed than others and can meet those ideals of what it means to store a collection, and others can't. So we're one of those ones that can't. We do the best we can. Also, the majority of our collection is really wouldn't be considered cultural patrimony. We have a lot of things that were donated by alumni, but we've never had any money to acquire objects. So it makes it, it's not that it's less imperative to preserve the objects with the best possible materials, but it's not as necessary to preserve them with the best possible materials. Yeah, but that's a great observation.
If I could, I'd donate. There's so much stuff in there that looks really fragile. All it takes is an earthquake or something, and stressful to look at.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I'm also going to take you into the museum lab, which is really messy. I apologize, because I've been working on a lot of different projects. Turn you around again. So this is the museum lab. This is where students who are working with museum objects tend to have their
objects brought over to these shelves over here, and then they get access to this space to work with the objects when they need to. We have a couple of computers in here, a nice color printer. We can make labels in here, etc. What you see on the table over, oh, I put most of it away. But the objects I was mentioning that we're doing the Frontalo exhibition looking at Afro-descendant communities. So this is one of the prints that will be used in that exhibition, along with the materials on these shelves over here, which have interesting connections to the Afro-Mexican community. We also have a small teaching collection. So students who are interested in doing museum education can make use of these objects and take them to do K-12 programming, etc. So that's this space. Any other questions, thoughts?
You just mentioned that there was a museum education. Is that a program or a class? I mean, a course?
It's a great question. Right now, the anthropology department can only support one museum class. We used to have two. So in the quarter system, there was a museum research class or curation, and then there was a museum exhibit development and design class. But we couldn't justify keeping the two on the books for a variety of reasons that I can't go into right now. But if you're interested in hearing more about it, I'd be happy to share. But so we only have the one, but there is a public history program on campus, and they have been trying to ramp up their museum classes. So they have a museum education course on the books. I'm not sure how often it's taught. They also have an archival class. They also have a curation class. They also have one more that I'm forgetting, like a collections care sort of class, I think. So if you are interested in museum studies, specifically, they do offer a number of classes, either if you're a history student or if you're an anthropology student and just want to use those classes as some of your electives.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you over to the last lab space that I can reach from here, which is the archaeology lab. So let's see. So this is, just to give you the full tour, this is a grad student space. So there's no grad students in here right now, but this is specifically for students in our MA program. And then the archaeology lab is through the other door.
Are there
Here.
many master's students? Are there any graduate students right now?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but I think it's around 30 that are currently
wow.
pursuing their master's degree. And it's all in public archaeology. So this is an archaeology lab with lots of fancy machines that I don't know the names of, but they're here and allow people to do fancy analyses that are cool. I wish I knew more about these machines to be able to tell you about them. But this is where the magic happens for on-campus lab work. We also have collaborative relationships with a number of other departments on campus that have other lab equipment, bigger lab equipment that can't fit in here. The university tries not to duplicate equipment, but there is this really amazing grant program where departments that need new technologies can apply for millions of dollars of grants from the university in order to acquire that equipment. So there's been talk in the department of trying to get some more fancy equipment through that program, but so far we haven't put together the application. Questions, thoughts? I know we're kind of running short on time. We have a few more minutes left.
I had a question about the master's program.
Sure.
I know you said that there's the one for archaeology. Are there other anthropological master's programs there?
Not here at CSUSB, no. We only have the one for archaeology. There are other master's programs. The one that would probably be closest is the history department started a public history master's program, I think last year, sometime very recently. And some of that has overlap. I'm sure you've noticed, or you can imagine that there can be quite a bit of overlap between history and anthropology, especially in some subdisciplines. So for example, if someone was interested in going into museum work or public education, then the master's in public history might be a good option.
To build off of that, in terms of biological anthro, what are there any master's programs there that you would suggest would be similar in that sense, where it's kind of a good amount of overlap?
I wish I knew, but I don't know much about any of the science programs having an MA program. I'm guessing if you wanted to do an MA with biological anthropology, you would want to find a program that specializes in that elsewhere. And I would guess that there's probably another CSU campus that has something, but I haven't looked into it myself.
Thank you.
Sure.
And I know there's also an Egyptology department, right? Do you guys have any connections or collaborations with them ever?
Yeah, that's a great question and something I should have highlighted. I mentioned that we had our 4 archaeologists, but there's actually a 5th archaeologist who's in the history department. Her name is Kate Liska, and she does field work in Egypt, and specifically she looks at mining expeditions and mining in ancient Egypt at a particular site called Wadi El Houdi. She just got back from fieldwork a couple of weeks ago. She goes every year. She tries to bring students with her. And she also, so she has a position. There's also an endowed position where we're able to bring in an Egyptologist every year to teach additional classes. And there's a second museum on campus called RAFMA. It stands for the Robert something Fullerton Art Museum, but it's an art museum, and they have a large collection on loan of Egyptian artifacts. And so those are available as well. They also take on student interns, usually as docents. So if you're interested in learning how to give tours and doing the kind of more public aspect of museology, it's a great place to get started. Thanks for that reminder. Any other questions or doubts or anything generally about Cal State San Bernardino? What the students are like, what the campus is like, what the department is like, what the food is like. You guys are going to be transferring, and I'm sure you have a lot of factors in mind of what you're looking for in a campus. Here at CSUSB, I can tell you that the advantages of coming here are that students who are looking for a unique experience will find it. There are constantly opportunities to find funding, to get involved, whether it's in a student group or with faculty research. The level of support and the way in which this campus really places an emphasis on student learning is unique. There's also a lot of emphasis on community engagement from the top level of the university, as well as internationalization and international education. So those are great foci to have when you're an anthropology major, especially. Like I mentioned earlier, our small class sizes, as well as the diversity of our faculty teaching interests is really great. I'm trying to think of what else to tell you. The parking is ample. The location is beautiful. We do have a really nice library, Fell Library, which and a great interlibrary loan program with all the other CSU campuses, which allows you to get any book that you might need that isn't here on campus at the library. We just had a new dining hall open, which has great food, and there's an Einstein Brothers right downstairs in the College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, which is beloved on campus. As I mentioned, we do have childcare on campus for young kids up to kindergarten age. My son went to the preschool here. It was really a lovely experience. We also have a variety of different centers on campus for students that have particular needs or backgrounds. So we have an undocumented student success center. We also have a lot of support for first generation students. Yeah, we do have 2 childcare centers. One is for the younger kids, and one is for the is for, I think, 0 to 3, and the other one must be 3 to 6. So one is just daycare and one is a preschool. We have, I was saying a lot of support for first generation students. I wish I had the exact statistic offhand, but I think it's about 70% of our students that are first generation students here. So there's a lot of commonality in that experience on campus. We also have a lot of faculty members that are first generation students as well. We have a Veteran Success Center. We also have a Project Rebound Center, which is for formerly incarcerated students coming back. We have a food pantry for students who are experiencing food insecurity. There are a lot of services for students with a variety of interests and needs, and it's just, again, generally a really supportive place. And I hope that some of you will call it home next fall.
Do you know how many, what's the kind of opening rate for campus like next spring? Are you guys going to have more classes being offered in the spring, or is it going to be about the same?
As far as I know, they're trying to move everything back to on campus as much as possible. So I don't have a specific statistic to throw out at you, but from what I've heard, no faculty member is allowed to teach more than half of their classes online. So unless there's like special circumstances, but so a lot of classes will be on campus. It's the larger classes, like the intro level introductory GE classes, that seem to still be offered online more than anything, because it's difficult to find the rooms to accommodate them with any semblance of social distancing or anything like that. So it seems like things are returning to normal-ish. There are some hybrid classes that are being offered more than before, but a lot of people, it's interesting because there seems to be a push towards coming back to campus, especially from the administration and a lot of the faculty that aren't big fans of teaching online. But what I've noticed is that a lot of the students have preferred learning online, the flexibility of it. So it'll be interesting over the course of the next couple of years to see where that lands us in order to accommodate student needs as well as the best possible teaching experience and learning experience. What I will say is that the university, in terms of online teaching, has moved to a model where professors who want to teach online or have the opportunity to teach online now have to have specific training. So it's not as willy-nilly. Like, I'm not sure how all of your online learning experiences were. I'm sure they were all fantastic. But some students have not had positive online learning experiences and have found Blackboard or Canvas sites that are very disorganized and difficult to find information, and the course is not really adapted to an online environment. And so the university is trying to avoid that, so that if there are future online classes, whether pandemic related or otherwise, that it's done in a very intentional way. I like teaching online. I think it's fun personally, but I'm really excited to get back into the classroom also.
I like learning online. I haven't taken a single class on campus yet.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, the pandemic experience.
I prefer the online format as well, just because of how much more flexible my schedule becomes with it.
Yeah. It's quite lovely. Yeah, I can see that as well. I have one class that I teach regularly online. I teach the Anthropology of Film, which is a fun class where we go through it's almost like a review of basic anthropological principles, but going into depth and applying those ideas to film as a cultural product. So we watch different Hollywood movies, not documentaries, Hollywood movies, in order to kind of do an assessment, a cultural assessment, and see how anthropological principles work out in the real world, spelled R-E-E-L rather than R-E-A-L. And I'm also, my medical anthropology course is transitioning to an online class as well.
Super interesting. I like how some original classes are out there. My husband has taken a visual anthropology course for grad school. I think it's really, really similar to what you're describing, because I got to watch the movies with him.
Yeah, I love visual anthropology. It's I picked up that class before I came to Cal State San Bernardino. I was teaching at San Diego State, and that was one of the classes I was assigned. And so it was kind of out of the blue, but I had so much fun with it that I brought it here. And it's been interesting finding ways for students to interact while watching movies. So for a while, I was having students chat via Twitter while we were watching films, or if we were doing it asynchronously whenever they happened to watch the film. And that was a really interesting model, but also introduced a lot of noise by using Twitter. So I transitioned last year to using PlayPosit, which is one of these online kind of interactive tools where you can watch a movie and I can leave comments embedded within the movie, and then students can start their own threads and discussions within the movie. So it's not just a singular watching experience from home, but you're also engaged with active thinking and learning while you're watching those films as well.
That's so cool. Because I took like a film class during obviously this online learning time, and it was just like independently watching the movie. So I wish we had something like that we could have done, actually engage with other students.
Yeah, it's fun. And you know what? It's funny. I started doing it because I realized I was being really lazy. Like when I first taught the film class, it was like, this is the ultimate, like very cush job where I go in and I give a 20-minute lecture and then I sit back and I watch a movie and then I say, hey, did it all make sense? And I was finding that it didn't. And I was like, okay, I need to be more active in actually teaching while we're watching a movie. And so that's how I got to where I am today. Any other questions, thoughts? Yeah.
If we have like, I guess more questions after this, or if like after, hearing you speak, if later on we come up with questions, is there someone at CSUSB we could like reach out to, like a rep or
yes. I mean, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me and feel free to distribute my email address. If you have any questions specifically about biological anthropology, you probably want to talk to or reach out to the chair of the department, Dr. Niewinner. And I can send you these emails. And as far as archaeology goes, you could contact probably Dr. Hepp, who does a lot of the undergraduate teaching, and I can send you that email as well. But really, I mean, our department, it's kind of amazing. We're all nice people. If you reached out to anyone in the department, I can only imagine that they would get back to you and be really excited to hear from you. We love getting transfer students. Probably about half of our students in the department are transfer students, and it's always excited. We're always excited when we have students who are excited. So if you have a particular passion, I would really suggest reaching out to whoever's interests in the department match yours the most. Start a conversation and get excited about your experience at CSUSB.
Well, thank you so much for showing us around the labs and the museum. I hope you guys, I mean, if you come up with questions, obviously reach out, and, because sometimes you don't think about something until 30 minutes from now or a week from now or something like that. So feel free to reach out. But, a lot of really great information. I think you can hear a lot of benefits about going to Cal State San Bernardino. So, yeah, that was really, really informative and really helpful. Thank you so much again for journeying on campus and walking around to show us everything. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And thank you all for taking the time to learn a bit about this program. And I hope you have great luck in wherever you decide to continue your anthropological or other education. If you want to join us here at CSUSB, we will be here. And I hope to hear from some of you via email.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
All right. So I don't know if you had any Anthro Club business that you wanted to talk about for now, or if you want to have another meeting, I don't know, next week or something. It's totally up to you, Aisha and company.
I guess maybe we could go ahead and see if like how many people would kind of want to extend this meeting or do something at another time. So maybe like a raise and like up with a little. I know we can do like a